Section 4. All right. So building community, right? I am not kidding when I wrote connection as survival. Connection is survival. We are built for connection. We are not built to do this alone. And so I know that all of those barriers we just talked about can seem like it's easier. It'll just be easier if I just do it myself. Right? It might be, maybe, but it's not easier on your nervous system. Connection is what your nervous system needs, right? So getting to know your supports, right? The Colchester Sexual Assault Centre. Which, do you have one near you? Do you have a sexual assault center near you? Do you have people that you can join, conversations with, classes with? Getting to know your supports, because our nervous system, our primate nervous system, relies on connection. Right? So if you're feeling like you're isolating because the world doesn't feel like it's built for you, connect. Right. All right. Taking care of yourself. So we started off, tend to yourself. That's how we started, right? Just take care of what you need taken care of. Take up space. Right? Ask for what you need. Because as we've noted in the last few minutes, we've been talking with each other, the world isn't always created to work for non-heterosexual people, right? So you have to take up your own space and take care of yourself. Yeah. Okay. So in an effort to get people in the chat and make this more collaborative, I've only put a few places here for support: the Community-Based Research Center, our sexual health centers, our sexual assault centers, Pride Health. And I'm hoping that people will share their supports and their questions, and we can get the discussion started. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you, Shannon, for sharing your perspective there on the LGBTQIA plus community. I know it's always something that is ever evolving. The language is always changing. So it's great to have somebody like you to come in and share that knowledge with us, which we greatly appreciate. We do have some questions rolling in if you're ready to tackle some. So
yep, got my pen, got my paper.
We have a question here from someone who works in the homeless sector, and they find it difficult finding shelters for individuals who identify in the community, and feel that there should be more accessibility for clients fleeing domestic violence situations. Yeah. Are you aware of shelters or support networks that may be better able to support those members of our community?
Oh, that's a big question. Okay, so I actually worked at ADSM for 7 years. I was an intensive case manager there. ADSM House is a shelter for women and children here in Halifax. And this was a while ago, but I did find it very inclusive, when it came to gender. They tried really hard, tried to shift policies, tried to get rid of the women and children portion, so that people understood that all gender expressions were welcome. But I don't actually have a good answer for where else I would send you, because so many of our transition houses are kind of actively anti-trans, and don't, just don't have the policies, don't have the lens to assist people outside of that cis woman lens. So yeah.
And I wouldn't be a good ED if I didn't plug my own organization. So I know that the team at the Colchester Sexual Assault Centre believes very strongly in supporting all members of the community, and we do have links to other organizations in the community that we can also refer to. At colchestersac.ca, we also have a page that's dedicated to queer and trans-friendly resources. So make sure you go to our website, which are all trusted and vetted links as well. If you are looking for additional local resources, head over to colchestersac.ca as well.
And I will say, again, this isn't an answer to your question, but every time I train a shelter or an organization and they only serve cisgender people, believe me, I am bringing it up, right? I am pointing out, I am teaching you trauma-informed care, but your very mandate is not. So I'm pushing back, I promise, as often as I can.
Indeed. So we have another question from a SANE nurse here. They work in the medical field, and they're wondering if there is anything that they potentially are missing when doing examinations following a violent act of sexual violence. They say they have performed the procedure on several gay men and lots of heterosexual women, but limited experience with those identifying as being lesbian. So is it it is a very traumatic examination. So any suggestions that you might have to help them in that process would be appreciated, or if you have any insight there.
Yeah, my first thought is consent, right? Just asking for consent at every change of position, change of hands. I'm going to put my hand on your shoulder. Is that okay, right? If the person, and this may not be possible, but if the person can help, would you like to move your butt, your buttocks? Would you like to do this by yourself? Things like that, so that the person knows they're in charge, right? That consent piece, and knowing that it might take more time, which I know you don't always have a lot of, and I know there's so few SANE nurses, but it might take a little bit more time, right? For somebody who doesn't identify with their vulva, vagina, uterus, and I am going to have to take a sample from there, and that might trigger their dysphoria. Just taking some time with that, and then offering them aftercare, offering them support. This is where you can. I know that was traumatic. Here's where you can go and get some aftercare.
That's great, thank you. And one thing I could add too is just asking the patient or the client how they would like to self-identify, because it just opens up the door that you could be one of those friendly people. And if they are straight, then it's not going to impact how a straight person would respond to the question, but at least it provides that queer or trans or gender nonconforming person, just gives them that perception that that you will be a friendly person or an understanding
100%,
person.
right?
Yeah. So
Wearing
it's
your-
just,
yeah.
it can just be as easy as just changing your language.
Yeah. And wearing your own pronouns on your shirt, or, so, and having your intake forms be as inclusive as possible, right? So that there's no assumptions.
Yeah. Are you aware of any queer education that is given to the law enforcement or justice systems? Is there any work that's being done around that?
So the Legal Information Society of Nova Scotia did a really good one that's available on their website for like language. And I'm so sorry, maybe somebody can find it, type it in the chat, but I think it was like queer and trans language for people to use. I work with a lot of law firms, and so we do trauma-informed stuff, and we talk about language there. It's not specifically queer, but I'm super queer, so my trainings always end up that way. So yeah, but LISANS, the Legal Information Society of Nova Scotia, I'm almost certain they have a free training on their website.
So another question here. I am an educator, and one of the things that I teach about is poverty and homelessness, and the importance of intersectionality to address poverty. An important thing to note is that all marginalized groups have a higher susceptibility to experiencing poverty and homelessness and job security, or job insecurity for that matter. So yeah, that's certainly a real lived experience, especially in the gay, queer, and trans community.
Yeah, and there's this expectations. I won't say the shelter, but there's a shelter that caters to cis white middle class people, and any presentation outside of that is difficult for them to navigate, right? And again, this was a few years ago, but when I was in the shelter system, that was really difficult, right? Everybody who didn't fit that mandate ended up going to other shelters. And for many people, the male shelters, they could not handle trans or non-binary presentations. And so those almost always went to the sort of cis women shelters.
Yeah. What are some things that we can implement in our workplaces to be more gay, queer, trans friendly or accepting, and help to break down those barriers?
So the first thing that comes to recognizing that every behavior is a form of communication. So some people are going to come in because of those past traumas, those past learnings about systems, and their behaviors are not going to be the ones that we look forward to, right? They're going to be maybe a bit louder. They're going to be a bit more volatile. They're going to, all of those behaviors that are like, oh, if you could just calm down, if you could just be quieter, respect, right? That turning of the script to this behavior is a form of communication. What is this person trying to tell us, right? And so molding our systems to an individual's needs and not making individuals make themselves smaller or different for our comfort.
Mm.
That's my first answer. Second, just making everything as inclusive as possible, right? Your posters, your intake forms, just everything, so that everybody feels included and sees themselves.
Yeah, that is actually a very easy thing that any organization or business can implement, is just that that visibility, that when your clients or customers enter the space, that they see themselves in the space. It can really change their reactions and behaviors when they enter a space. And I know that we've done that at the Colchester Sexual Assault Centre, that we have queer affirming artwork, and we have elements from the First Nations community and the African Nova Scotian community, and embracing diversity. So those are just easy things that that we can all do, for not just for the queer and trans community, but for any of the marginalized communities who access our services. Is that representation matters, and if people see themselves in the space, then they will have a more positive experience when they enter the space.
Exactly. Yeah. And they can just show up as you are, right? No making anybody small to make us feel comfortable.
We would like to thank you for joining us today and sharing your valuable perspective. And it's always great for a refresher for all of us to keep exploring and relearning, re-educating ourselves, because as I said earlier, language is always changing, and our approaches have to evolve to embrace our diversity, and to make our workplaces a bit safer or more inclusive or welcoming for everyone. So really appreciate you joining us today.